On today's episode, we talk with the Libertarian candidate for governor of New York, Larry Sharpe, about why all of the objections to liberty-oriented solutions are a projection about the dystopia we live in right now. We hear how school choice is apparently unpopular, how in a libertarian society there would be no roads, why racism can only be solved by the government, how libertarians have no way to fund police, military, and courts, talk about how libertarian healthcare just means letting people die, and lastly, we hear the age-old joke about Ayn Rand, Rand Paul, and Paul Ryan. This is Cringe Posts. Hello friends, welcome to this episode of the Cringe Post podcast. This is the show where we go through our social media feeds, we look for the cringiest political and cultural takes, we break down what they get wrong and try to provide solutions, help correct them on their way, and of course, hope to have a laugh as well. This week, we are excited to bring on the governor for New York from the Libertarian Party, Larry Sharpe. We've been fans of his for a long time. We're really excited to have him on. What's the best way for them to get plugged into your campaign, Larry?
I love that. You just called me the governor of New York. I hope that's true. That'd be awesome. Yes.
Absolutely. The next governor right here.
There we go. Yes. No, LarrySharpe.com. Easiest way. Larry, I'm on all the things, right? I'm going to say a nice boomer thing. I'm on all the interweb stuff. That's what I'm on. So if you're into TikTok, if you're into YouTube, if you're into Twitter, Facebook, yes. Parler, MeWe, all of them. I'm on all the things.
If you've ever seen The Office, you can just send him a woof, get a fax, get a tweet, get a Facebook post, all of them.
Good.
Yeah, I remember the way I was introduced to Larry's stuff was through the short YouTube videos you did when you were running for the vice presidential nomination back in, I think, 2016, if I'm not mistaken. There.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. Back
and
in the day.
those were really great, just bite-sized, sort of solution-oriented type. Here's the position, here's how you can fix these problems, and they were great. And so we're really excited to have you on to help elucidate some of the problems people have and the cringy posts they make when they think there's absolutely no way you can solve these problems with a freedom-oriented solution. Before we get started, just as a reminder, if you want to like and share and subscribe, do all those great things to help us grow. We are growing, we appreciate it, and this helps all the more. We do have our visual.
If you're watching this, do it. There's no if. Yeah. Don't if it.
Do it.
If you are watching it and you like it, then don't steal this. You are literally stealing this content if you don't hit a like or a share or a something or a comment or whatever. You are literally a thief. So do the thing he just told you to do.
But we're not going to make you do it by force. That's the difference here. There's no
I'm
law.
just going to yell at you until you do it.
We'll guilt and shame you into it. No. Before we take on everyone else's cringe posts, if you are a fan of the show, you will well know that we look back on our own bad posts, and my goodness, do we have some bad ones. And when we have guests on, we like to feature the bad posts or memories or any kind of situation, any cringy moment from the past of them. So Larry, why don't you introduce a cringe moment or post from your past here for us?
Well, I have one from like 2 weeks ago. Are you kidding me? Yes, no. The problem or the issue, I won't call it a problem. I'll say it's an issue. The issue that we have when running for office as libertarians is we want to keep libertarians satisfied, of course, because the libertarians are always our base. But we also want to get out there and get other people to get involved too. So if you're too hardcore libertarian, you get nobody else. So you've got to try to find that balance of being libertarian enough, but also open enough to get either people who don't care or pissed off Democrats or pissed off Republicans to kind of come our way. That's not easy. And then recently, with the way many libertarians are shadow banned now, because we were anti-mandates, anti-lockdowns, all those things, and that, of course, makes you evil. So they shadow ban us. So we have to do that, but then still try to be exciting enough to get some traction. Otherwise, we don't grow. So we're in a really tough spot in social media that I simply wasn't in last time. So on top of that, I'm running a campaign across New York State. I have literally hundreds of volunteers, if I include people who are out there getting, signatures for me, dozens on my teams. My social media team is at least 12 people. I have like one person for Twitter, one person for the thing, but I can't be on all of them, right? So we have meetings so that we can talk about it. But my libertarian leadership is very similar to any other leadership that I would do. I let people have ownership of it and go. What does that mean? I get some really good content. And it also means I get some screw ups too. So I get all of those. So other weekend, we're trying to figure out how do we motivate the left to still hear us on our left-leaning issues while still being aggressive enough to get people to notice and not totally pissing the right off, right? So trying to make that mix. We didn't do well. So we were talking about gay frogs and we used the phrase groomer. Oh my God, terrible, right? And when today's the LP using the word groomer, oh my God, what were we thinking? So I think what happened is the person who was on the team, and I take full responsibility for the badness, even though somebody else posted it, it's mine. I don't even tell people who it is. Like if someone does it, I say, I'm not telling you I did it. It's my fault. I'm just letting you know that just so you know, that wasn't me. However, my responsibility.
Sure.
So, but what we don't do is if you notice, I don't pull it down. Unless it's literally insulting somebody like that. I don't pull it down. Leave it up. And then we edit it. And we let people know we edited it. Like we say, yes, this was the screw up. Here's the edit to what we should have done, what we could have done. And we probably shouldn't have used this at all. And then we shouldn't use anything with groomer in it. Wow, that was dumb. And we probably shouldn't have about like gay frogs and stuff. That was not the right thing to do, right? So we let it out. It's up there. We edited it, but it's still there. So, and to be forward, there'll be more.
Right. Well, and
there'll be more.
That's one of the things that we like about this show is that, people are imperfect. And
yes,
even if you're in a spot where you don't feel that you need to develop that much more in your ideology or what have you, there is always room to grow. Even when you're confident,
yes.
To think you're going to believe the exact same things in 10 years than you do now, that's a little naive. And so being able to have that growth and to look back and to correct those kinds of cringy posts is one of the things that we like to do. And I sure hope that I will keep getting better in the ways that I message as well as the ideas and the thoughts, because if I thought I
have to go even further with this, right? Not just individually. I mean, it is individually, but the reality of it is what the liberty movement lacks usually is talent, right? We don't have enough talent for all the stuff we want to do, right? So if we need to do things for 100 people, we got maybe 3 who can do it well. And now 97 people are kind of jumping through hoops trying to figure out how to do things because they're not good at this thing because they do something else. So that's a challenge. Plus, we don't have that much cash. So we're not paying professionals. There are now people who are learning and volunteering and figuring things out. We also the most motivated people often tend to be younger. They tend to be people right out of college or in college. So you haven't been around the world that much. So you're learning and figuring things out. So what I'm trying to get at is a campaign like mine, and I hate to keep pushing the campaign. No, I don't.
No, you do. Go donate right now.
Yes, the campaign that I'm pushing now, which is what I was doing in 2018 also, is actually creating people who are doing well. I'm creating a talent base that other people will pull. My policy team is 12 people. These are now people who know how to write libertarian policy.
Wow.
They are writing it. They know how to run an actual policy meeting to figure out how to create policy. They don't have that. That's not a thing that we have. We have a ideology to yell at people. Government bad. That's what we have, which is not a bad thing. But when you're running for office, you also have to have people who can create policy. So that's being built. LarrySharpe.com is literally a policy library. So if you're running for office in the Liberty Movement, go there, take whatever works for you, adjust and move, and you have that. So while I want you to be good, Don, of course I do. I want you guys to be good. But I also want you to be able to train others to be good too. We need people who can do good social media, who can do good PR, who can do good policy and good meetings and get signatures and all the things required to build out campaigns.
I like
That's
what you
exactly
did with
right.
in that you've made it okay for people to make mistakes, right? And that it's like, yeah, someone else posted this, but I own the responsibility at the end of the day because if someone is so scared if they make a mistake they're going to get cut or something bad is going to happen, no one ever tries anything new. And I think that's really awesome way with your philosophy of growing new leaders and different people in this. That's a really cool thing.
Well, I am a leadership trainer, my day job. That's what I do. Literally, that's literally my job. So when I have a saying I use all the time. When you demand perfection, you will get deception. That's how it always works. Because if you demand perfection, people aren't perfect. They're just going to lie to you.
Yeah.
So don't demand perfection and you won't get deception and people begin to grow. It really isn't that crazy. And the responsibility always lies upon the leader, right? When you delegate authority. You don't delegate responsibility. Responsibility is always yours, but authority in my campaign, authority is never mine. I delegate authority out to everybody, right? But responsibility is always mine. So my biggest goal is twofold. One, to be the center of purpose. That's number one, right? So people know what the purpose and the goals are. And then two, to bring on the right people with the right environment. If I do those two things, I'm rocking and rolling. All the rest is up to individuals.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good. It sounds like very much the words of a very selfish person who doesn't care about people, which is what libertarians get characterized as in these cringy posts. So speaking of them, let's take a look at these cringe posts that we've got. So the first one we've got is part of a conversation having to do with school choice. So the tweet reads, "Let's be clear. The right-wing pro-charter people are desperate. Their message is unpopular. Their message is unconvincing. Parents see through their mendacity. Parents trust their public schools and their public school teachers." And this to me just sounded like the biggest cope I've seen because, regardless of what you think the particular solution is to education and public education and what have you, the last 2 years, and in particular 2020, showed the complete opposite of everything he lists. Parents do not trust their public schools and their public school teachers, and the pro-choice school choice movement is more popular than it's ever been. Homeschooling is like more than doubled. People want to expand into charter schools and private schools. So this to me made me laugh, not only because I think he's wrong in the idea of limiting freedom and choices, but more that he's trying to cope with the fact that people realize that more and more free choice is a better option, and he's trying to gaslight you. He's trying to tell you, no, people trust their public schools. They don't want choice, and I just don't think that's the case.
Well,
do you have thoughts on that, Larry?
He starts with right wing. He says right wing so that to disregard anything after that. Right? Yeah. It doesn't matter what it says, right?
Yeah.
He can say the right wing people want to give you money and make you rich, and you'd be like, what? No, who wants that? The right wingers want that. Doesn't matter, right? So he uses right wing to make sure that people don't understand it. And he goes, they're desperate because their message is so unpopular. Well, the idea of, pro-charter schools, that in many cases actually is unpopular, but that has nothing to do with the rest of it, right? People want school choice. That's 100% true. But he picks out charter because statistically it's an accurate statement. Statistically, many people don't like charter schools because they're not really private schools. And they do wind up taking money away from other public schools, and it validates the public school system. So a lot of people actually don't like charter schools. That part is accurate. But then he walks through the rest and makes this, I based it on something real, and then just said whatever I wanted. Right. The idea that we're all trusting of the schools and teachers, some people still are. I think that's true. Some are. But I think we understand that many parents are not. The silver lining to the lockdowns, and lockdowns were terrible, obviously. But there was one silver lining to them, which is parents started looking at what their kids were being taught. And prior to that, they were not. They were much more blind what was happening, assumed it was going well. I mean, I homeschool my youngest daughter now, right? For that same reason. I was like, I'm not putting my kid in that school. There's no way. And I live in New York City.
Yeah.
So my state spends about $28,000 per kid per year.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what my taxes are for schools.
Yep.
And I'm getting nothing for them now because I'm homeschooling my daughter now. So yes, but the actual answer is localized control. That really is the answer. Now people will say, but then, oh my God, your kids will, if we don't have, what? Oh my God. Most people don't realize this. The Department of Education actually hasn't existed since, it existed prior to 1980, but it was just basically a repository for information. It had no teeth. It began having teeth in 1980. Now people have gray hair like me. We were in school before 1980. And somehow we learned how to read and write. Somehow we learned how to do stuff, even though there was no DOE on top of us figuring this stuff out. So yeah, we'll be just fine. If I'm going to trust somebody with my kids, I would rather trust a teacher over trusting a bureaucrat. Now, will a teacher make a mistake? Yeah. Teachers are humans. We just discussed this. They'll make mistakes. But if one teacher makes a mistake, we can fix that one mistake. But when a bureaucrat that controls an 18 million person state makes a mistake, oh, I just screwed the entire state. So I'll trust teachers over bureaucrats any day of the week.
Yeah, there's so I was homeschooled. My parents did an awesome job, and we had a really cool program out
Not
here.
Not sure about that, but that's okay.
Ouch! I set myself up for that. But there was a really cool school program out here where a district basically said, "Hey, if you're a homeschooling student or homeschooling family, register with our district, and we'll actually give you the dollars that we receive. You know, I think it was like 80% of the dollars we receive to fund you because you're part of our head count." You just have to have like a co-op, and you have to kind of tell us where you guys are going on field trips or what type of courses you're taking. And what was really awesome about it was you basically had this pool of families that came together, and they were sharing knowledge about what type of courses they were taking. They were saying, hey, I went to go do this, field trip to this city, and we did this museum and this other type of thing. And you were able to kind of like show with your dollars like what was valuable, right? And it was way more efficient, right? Like I think they gave like $2,000 or something like that per student, which is, I think it's like 10% of the average spending in the public school side per student. And we had a great education, right? And I was able to do things like at age 16 go tour around the country in a rock and roll band because I could do school in the van, right? As I was going and doing stuff like that. And I had the freedom, and I was able to still go to college and have all the different education certifications. I never felt outclassed or anything like that. One of the things, though, that people bring up when I talk about my experiences, they say, well, your parents were really motivated, really involved in your education, and that's the reason you turned out so good. And I definitely think that is a big part of it. But what do we do about kids that don't have parents that are interested in their education? I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that, because that's kind of a big objection.
My new policy for New York State is that we create a fund separate from the government, so it can't be sucked up by the government, similar to what they do in Singapore and Norway. And that fund begins to pay for school tax. As that fund pays for school tax, it cuts property tax in about half across New York State, letting now rent stabilize, the youth can stay, retirees can stay and spend their pensions in New York State, which is what I want. But more importantly, the money comes directly from New York State, not from local people, just directly from New York State, and it follows the kid. Wherever the kid goes, that's where the money goes. About $18,000, what I think it'll be. In addition to that, I'll give any family per kid who wants to go either private school or homeschool a $4,000 credit. Now, why $4,000? Because that's what people will accept in my state. That's the number I know they'll accept. That's number one. But second, I also, while I give them the credit, they can still use school facilities. So let's say, for example, you want to be homeschooled. You can be, but you still want to be on the football team or the chess club, or you want to go to the prom, whatever. You can still use those facilities. Your taxpayer money, in theory, is still paying for it. You're still a state resident, so you could still use those facilities. But you can be homeschooled, or you can be private schooled. Guess how much private school is going to cost in New York State per year? $4,000, because that's guaranteed government money. And companies love guaranteed government money. So that's what it'll cost. So to give the opportunity to do that. But even if you go to a private school, you can still use the public school facilities, which makes it easier to open up private schools, because now you don't have to have a gym if you don't want to. You can use the gym that's at the public school if you want to, right? You don't have to have a swimming pool if you don't want to. You can if you think it's appropriate. You got the money, build what you think is appropriate. So this keeps my community together, even though I may want to deal with it separately. But not just that. If the money comes from the state and there's no federal funds, which is what I will also cut out, and then there's no strings attached to the state money, it's simply per kid. That's it. That means the state and the federal government cannot control you anymore. School districts are controlled by money. Once the money is gone, districts do what they want, which I don't mind at all. As long as I have a statewide test one time for a high school diploma, that's all I care about. That's all I care about. Can you get your kid to pass a high school diploma test? You can? You win. You can't? You're in trouble. Send your kid back to school. And that's all I care about. As long as you can do that, we're good. This system allows you to homeschool if you want to, not homeschool, private school if you want to. Say your parents aren't very interested. You still get $4,000 and send them to the co-op, because the co-op becomes a private school. So my parents can't be involved. Or maybe I'm a single parent and I got to work all day and I can't really do it. Okay, great. I can still send my kid to that cool private school that you went to, that your parents cared about, right? I can still do that if I want to, because I got that credit. The credit is the key.
That's a great, the last little bit there too just highlights how when you have opportunities for choice, there will be people who answer those needs, because the idea that there are parents who don't have the ability or the bandwidth to be a super involved homeschooling parent, that's not a unique scenario. Absolutely. And there will be, people don't like the phrasing of this necessarily, but there's a market for that, right? There's a need for that, and there will be people who see that need and care. One of the funniest objections that happens is, it's like, you get rid of the public schools, then who's going to care for all the poor kids? And or some object along those lines, and it's like, do you think
poor
that the
kids
people
are being destroyed in this system? Are you crazy?
Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing.
Dystopian future they talk about is today.
Right.
Right. But then the world, it's ending now. In Rochester, right now in New York State, if you are a black male, there is a less than 10% chance you will graduate high school.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Did you hear what I just said?
It's insane.
Yeah, that's today. It's now.
Right. So that's your first point. And the second thing is, it's like, okay, so let's just say that there are all these people who care in the public school system and they're hamstrung, they're not able to do what they want to do. We create these opportunities for choice, and do those people suddenly disappear? Do the people who care deeply about the kids vanish into thin air because we've expanded choice? Or have we empowered those people to be able to create local, connections and community organizations that now get better funding and better sources more targeted towards the kids in need in their areas? That to me is
I'm
always
not even concerned about the funding. I mean, this may sound crazy. We don't need that much funding. I mean, to be very fair. We keep putting money in. New York State, again, I know my state very well. New York State spends the most, $28,000 per kid.
Oh my
and
gosh.
we rank in the bottom 50% in everything. Sometimes as low as 37 out of 50.
Yeah.
So maximum dollars and crappy results.
Yep.
So it isn't the funding.
Yep. Nope. Agreed. Any more thoughts on that, Britt? Or are we good to move to our next post here?
Let's move to the roads.
All right.
I'm sorry. Did I yap too much, guys? I'm sorry.
No, please. We are eating it up. We love it. I just want to make sure we get all of these cringe posts, because how can it be a libertarian episode without objection to the roads? That is my question here. So, we went
Damn you, roads.
We went to my favorite cesspool, which is Reddit, and there's an image posted there with libertarian roads, and it shows this tiny little strip of paved road amongst a completely deteriorated exterior. So it's completely surrounded by non-paved roads, and there's just this little strip of road, the meme being libertarian roads there. And then there are the comments here that read, I don't see a toll booth for this person's private part of the road. And a reply to that saying, that's because we can all depend on the altruistic generosity of the super wealthy. And lastly, someone commenting, just like Jeff Bezos, look at all the good he's doing. And cue the actually. So let's do it. Let's bring in the actually. As much as that's a derogatory term here. The first thing that I'll just remark before I lead into you, Larry, is that when they talk about as though the roads, we can all depend on the altruistic generosity of the super wealthy. First and foremost, actually, people who are wealthy do disproportionately give a ton to your charities, to your organizations. I mean, people love to use the slur like, oh, Coke funded X, Y, or Z. The Smithsonian is Coke funded, for goodness sake, to some degree, right? But secondarily,
burn
that's
it
not
down.
Probably,
burn it down to the ground.
but when there's something like the roads, the way that works would absolutely be taken care of via an entrepreneurial solution, because what we have now is a system.
Let me give you the actual answer.
That requires force. Yeah, go ahead.
This is what I'm talking about. There's two ways of handling it, right? The first way is raising money for infrastructure in general, right? Mm-hmm. And that is leasing naming rights out to bridges, tunnels, particularly in large cities. Grossly easy to do, right? People already came to me about my idea, right? We have tunnels and bridges right now in New York City that are $18 to cross one way. Let me repeat that. $18 to cross one way. It's so bad people drive up to the bridges, park in made up parking lots so they can all jump together in the same car to cross the bridge because they can't afford it. That's a thing that happens in New York City. That's
you better create a law to stop it then, Larry.
We could just punish them and put them all in jail. Or we could lease naming rights to the bridge. And what I always get is, you're privatizing the bridges. That's not what I said. What I said was lease naming rights to the bridges. You're just so busy and so scared that you just want to yell at people. What I'm saying is, stop yelling at people and have a solution. Your solution is, well, tax the rich. The rich write the laws, so you can't tax them. It's their people who write the laws. That's why every single country that used to have laws that tax the rich stopped those laws, because it doesn't work, because they write the laws. So instead, Give the rich the desire to give us more stuff, and they will. How? If I tell the rich, hey, do you want to have your name on a bridge? They go, yes, I'm rich. I know you are. Put your name on the bridge and give us $100 million a year for it, and then we'll take the tolls off so the working, poor, and middle class don't pay it, and then you'll cover the maintenance on the bridge so we don't have to pay for it. Oh my God. That's how that works. Companies are looking all the time to market. You make it the Pepsi Bridge, the 3M Bridge. These are bridges that in major cities are seen by millions of people. They're put in product placement in movies and TV shows, shot on Hulu and Netflix and such. All those things. Here's what I get all the time. But Larry, we don't all live in big cities. That's true. You know who's fixing roads in smaller cities? Domino's Pizza. They are literally doing it. They're going around fixing them. And what they do is they fix the pothole better and faster than the city workers do. Please, city workers will be mad at me. You can go work for Domino's if you want to. Anyway, and then they put their symbol on it. That looks terrible. I agree. So let's not do that. Let's follow the what we have already right now, which is the adopt a highway model. We're going to do the adopt a highway for cleaning. Let's do it for maintenance. Duh. This now becomes the Domino's Pizza sponsored highway or road or something, whatever it is. They get a sign on it or they get some kind of advertising on it and they fix the roads. Isn't that, oh, but Larry, what about the government workers? Well, government workers don't get fired. So what does that mean? Now government workers can fix the roads in the poor neighborhoods. The poor people get better service. What? Yes, poor people, because we don't fire these people, they still exist. So now the other roads, these people will be fixing them. Everyone gets better service. No one's taxes get raised. And not just that, if you live in a poor neighborhood or a working class neighborhood and you have a huge pothole and your car hits that pothole and your car is now trashed and you got to drop $300 to fix your car, you're screwed. You're screwed. That's a lot of money if you're a working class person. To fix your car over a pothole? Wouldn't you rather have Domino's Pizza? And the elites go, well, that just looks so tacky. I have an idea. Give me another answer. I don't have one. Tax the rich. I have an idea. Shut up and let people have cars. Let people have cars. If you can give me a better answer, let's do that. So now what you're saying, I'm sure, is, but Larry, should we be privatizing roads? There's no way New York State's going to privatize roads. That is out of the question. My state is 3-1 Democrat to Republican. That is a fantasy. Not going to happen. So some of you libertarians are like, but wait a minute, we got to privatize roads. Not in my state, you can't. That is impossible. But can I sponsor? Yes, I can. Can I lease naming rights? Yes, I can. So I'm going down that road. And that is a way that this makes the left happy because rich people and big corporations are paying for infrastructure. You want that, right? Yes, you do. If you're on the right, no more taxes. There's no taxes. I've made both sides happy and better service for both the working class and the working poor. Come on, not a bad deal.
I love it because the incentives are all proper, right? Like you've got a bridge that's named after Pepsi, and there's no way in heck that they're going to let that bridge deteriorate, right? Like the Pepsi bridge is going to be the best looking bridge in the state because their name is on it. So you've incentivized
and we still own
ownership.
The bridge.
Yeah,
we still own the bridge, so that means we can still inspect the bridge. And as long as you front load the contract, if they decide to screw up or Pepsi goes out of business for some crazy reason, no worries. You front load the contract with the cash. They lose the contract. New contract comes up. Front load that one too. As long as you're front loading contracts, it's totally fine.
To me, it's interesting because when people talk about the deteriorating states of the roads and how it's just such a big problem, you have to tax. It makes me laugh because when you have these systems set up by government agencies that have this taxing power, it's this they can build beyond what should be supported. And in Washington State, that's where Britt and I are both from here, we see the absolute corruption of so much of the Department of Transportation building these packages that are building like light rail in across our state, and it makes no sense. By the time it's supposed to be finished is 2040, and it'll be a single, one long trip of rail, and you think, you're like, do you think that's going to be the most effective way to transport people in 20 years? Do you think we're going to have so little innovation that but the great thing about solutions like these is they are immediate solutions that help the conditions now. They help the conditions where they are actually needed and where people need to be moved, and they provide value for the companies that want to lease these naming rights right now. And as technology gets
you could
better,
go even further with this, right? Say I don't know what the new cool kind of road is. For the sake of argument, I'm going to call it a Google road. That's what I'm going to call it, whatever the actual cool road is. So you want to have a Google road? Awesome. I'll let you have a Google road right next to the interstate. Next to the interstate. And your rental for that road is maintenance on the interstate.
Yep.
So build your Google road. Right? Whatever that thing. Maybe there's electric cars or trucks on it or whatever. Maybe there's going to be, I don't know, driverless trucks on it or whatever is the thing the Google road needs. Or maybe it's a rail system where they're going back on magnets or something. Whatever is the cool thing. I don't have to know these things, right? I just let them do it. Now, what does that mean? They may charge for it. They may charge rent or whatever if you want to use the cool Google road. But the interstate is still there. So you can use the interstate or use the cool Google road, either way. And the interstate is now repaired without federal funds. I don't want federal funds in my state because once I have federal funds in my state, people don't know this, federal funds going to your interstate means you have to follow federal guidelines on things like DWI, on things like speed limits, on things like that. You got to follow all the roads, all the rules. Well, I want state rules on what I want to decide in my state, what DWI rules are, what speed limits are, what all those things are. So federal money, have a nice day. That's the issue.
Love it.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to our next post here. And this one's a little, again, a Reddit post, a little bit long here, but I wanted to bring this up because I thought this was an interesting critique here that was kind of funny. So this person posts on Reddit. It is a well-established phenomenon in the social science that people discriminate against each other. People form groups and discriminate the outgroup, and they really don't need any sort of good reason to do it. This discrimination goes as far as accepting personal material losses, as long as the outgroup's losses are greater than your own. In practice, this means that a free market is not going to solve discrimination, period. It is not possible to have a socially tolerant society without government intervention promoting this tolerance. Small government liberalism is simply impossible. And this is funny.
I would look at the South for this. Mm-hmm. Why? It's the most important thing. Our own nation here in the South. There were laws for segregation. Laws for segregation. Why? Why were there laws? If this guy is correct, why were there laws? There were laws because if there wasn't government intervention, people would have integrated.
Yeah.
That's the reason.
Exactly. Yeah.
What he says is exactly the opposite, and the data is right in front of us in our own nation 60 years ago. Right here. There had to be laws or we would have integrated. Here's how the market does work. I have a diner. I'm in Birmingham. I'm losing money. Black people have money and like sandwiches. I guess I'll let a couple black people in to eat because I want to pay my rent. So all of a sudden now, I let black people eat in my diner because I got to pay my rent. The government knew that was true and said, I will put you in jail if you let black people eat in your diner. So what he's saying is demonstrably, provably false in our own country 70 years ago.
I completely agree. I think one of my favorite examples too that goes exactly to your point there is I work on this project called Free Markets Destroy, and we talk about things how we destroy. One of the categories is racism, right? And one of the great examples is this how Sears catalog was the ways in which so many black people were able to purchase goods because there were these catalogs. They didn't have to go into a store where they would get discriminated against, and Sears was like, this is a huge market. And so then the government started going through their mail and to try to stop them from being able to place these orders to get things. And so then Sears started including instructions in their booklet on how to get around this and where the safe spots were to go and things like that. And so to the person's point, yes, people will discriminate. People do that over all kinds of stupid things. But the best part about free societies is that the market actually creates that incentive better than any government law ever can.
No, but hold on.
To bridge those gaps.
What Hannah is saying here is Hannah is saying discrimination. What she means is racism.
Yeah. Yeah.
She doesn't say racism because she'd be wrong.
Right.
Humans are not racist naturally. Humans are tribal naturally. Yeah. That's who we are. We are naturally tribal. But race is something that we can all love the same baseball team and not care what race we are and think the other baseball team people are evil and let's go beat them up. Mm-hmm. We do it all the time, right? And it doesn't do what race. Doesn't matter how old you are, young, how much money you make. You like the Yankees? Let's go beat up the Red Sox fans. That's just how it works. I don't care what else you are, right? You mean Puerto Rican, black, white. Let's go together. Doesn't matter. Man, woman, who cares? We are tribal and tribal for many reasons, but more importantly, tribalism changes and shifts. Racism does not. Right? Tribalism shifts. I like you. Oh, you like the Yankees now? Okay, you're now part of my tribe. Happens all the time. Right? We intermarry within tribes. Now our tribes are one big tribe now. That's human nature. So I'm assuming she with Hannah, my assumption is she, is that she says discrimination, meaning racism. If you say racism, she is utterly incorrect. And that's what she means. So she is being disingenuous because she is wrong.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, Britt?
No, Larry's taking all the good points, and I'm happy to hear him. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good,
up.
man. No, do not shut up.
I don't want to steal your show.
I'm loving this.
No.
I actually do have one point. So my dad is Filipino, and we were traveling. We were traveling in Germany, and my brother and I and my dad, when we get a lot of sun, we get a little bit dark, and we went into a store, and my brother was trying to buy something, and the shop owner was a bit older and was like, "No, I think you're trying to steal it." Basically chewed my brother out. My dad didn't take too kindly to it, and it's a pretty busy spot in Germany, and so everyone witnessed that and everyone left, right? So that shop owner lost out on probably 30 different customers that day in terms of being able to like sell to them. And then obviously we left a bad review online, and there's consequences, right? When you allow the market to generate consequences for people, you solve a lot of these things, right? And people, even if they harbor bad thoughts or feelings in their heart, right? Like they're still going to adapt their behavior because everyone has to eat, kind of to your point earlier, right? If you're in a diner and you want to be able to pay the rent, even if you have bad thoughts, like you're going to compromise to make sure that you survive, because that's a higher that's a higher motivator than potential racism or whatever someone is feeling.
Well, and that illustrates what you often say, Brett. The government can't make you a better person, and really the market can't make you a better person either. Really, that's an individual thing to do. But the best way that you can
I disagree. The market can.
Well, I think the thing about the market is that it can encourage good actions, right? And to me that, it's not necessarily going to change your heart, but it at least goes a long way to helping there. Whereas the government is only able to do things to force you, and that will never work. The market can work. The government cannot. I wouldn't say the market will. You have to be, willing to change for it to work
it's not
too.
magic powers, but it has a chance. The government has no chance. The market might.
Right. Exactly. All right, we'll move on to our next post here, and here we go. So there was a discussion talking about what a libertarian candidate was discussing some things here on Twitter, and this objection came up in the conversation. So I thought it would be a good one to present to our solutions guy Larry here. So this person tweets, "Since you represent the Libertarian Party, here's a great resource for more info about what your party supports. Hint. Just police, military, and courts. How they'd fund them without taxes is what makes libertarians so amusing." And then links to the libertarian.org page. So I guess the question here becomes like, what do we do with police, military, and courts? How do we fund these systems? How are they set up in a libertarian?
There are two pieces here. The first one is, why does anyone run libertarian have to go to Libertarian Party and expect that that's who they are? The Republican Party literally has no platform. I'm not joking. That's not a thing. That's a reality. They literally have no platform. So if you're Republican, you stand for nothing, right? That's what I should tell her. You're Republican, you stand for nothing. Why? Because go to your party, find a platform. There isn't one. You stand for nothing. So why is every libertarian always considered the extreme of whatever you want? So there are Democrats who believe that we should forcefully put socialism into America, and those disagree should go to jail. So when Miss Mary Hicks, if she's a Republican, I go, oh, so you stand for nothing? If you're a Democrat, so you want to put all people in jail who won't become socialists? Let me link you to the people. That's what she does?
Right.
So I don't even play her silly game. I'm not going to accept that. I'm either going to ignore her, or I'm going to scold her the same way I just scolded her. I'd scold to her face. The same way. You can't. Did I ever say that? Did you hear me go, burn it all to the ground? Well, jokingly, yes. But not in reality. You never heard me actually say that. Of course not.
We're just going to clip that part of you right now and post that everywhere.
That's good, please. But the point is, do you want a smaller government? Yes. Because what I can tell you is Mary's unhappy with her country now. Why? Because almost everyone is. You're not screwing around on Facebook attacking people unless you're unhappy with your government. So your government has been bigger and bigger and bigger. How's that work for you, Mary? Why are you up here talking trash on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you're talking trash, right? Why are you talking trash on Twitter? Because you're unhappy. Because the government keeps getting bigger and it keeps failing you. And it's been failing you for 20, 30, 40 years. So you keep getting hammered for 40 years, but I'm the crazy one for trying something new. Did I get that right? You have been bent over and non-consensually been given a high hard one for 30 years, but I'm the crazy one. I don't know. I'm thinking I want to fix something. But to our actual point, how do you fund police, military, and courts? Who says there has to be no taxes? Who says there has to be no taxes? Number one, who says that? But not just that. Who says you can't grow revenue without taxes? There are many ways you can grow revenue without taxes, right? One of them might be people choosing to use things, pay to use the things. And wealthy people would pay more to use the more wealthy people things. You can do that too, of course. And what even most libertarians would agree with, the vast majority would be, no matter what, they would agree with some kind of a consumption tax or tax on trade, because the government is literally, the courts and cops and military are to create stability for transferring private property back and forth. Almost every libertarian I know would be fine with paying for that. So why would that be a problem? Even if you could even in theory create, literally, if you want to do anything, you pay your percentage of your taxes because you're going to be paying whatever you're going to be buying, you pay a percentage of what you're buying, because if something goes wrong, you're going to need a court or a cop or a military. So you're paying for it. What's wrong with that? Most people would agree with that. Even libertarians would.
And the funny thing that I think is, let's take this idea where if you were to say, well, let's talk about private funding of police, military, courts, and they're like, what about poor people? And you might say, well, the rich people have actually a greater interest to make sure that there are their private property is protected, so they probably would fund police. And then the retort often to that is, well, then it's going to be skewed. Then it's going to be sort of corrupt in their interest.
Now.
And that's exactly it. It's like, so it's almost like, what if there was one giant monopoly that forced you to pay for it, and then and then these are also the people who will complain about rightfully so, that the court systems are arresting nonviolent drug users and putting them away in a corrupt way, bombing people overseas who are hospitals and innocent civilians, or the racist cops, and so it's hilarious and amusing.
If she's a Democrat, I'm sure she's been screaming about the over policing and the terrible policing in the poor neighborhoods. It's happened. The dystopian future is today. Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
And then if she's a conservative, you have to say, well, how good were your police on when it came to vaccine mandates? How were they good at actually upholding the Constitution that they swore to uphold? How were they during the Black Lives Matter riots, burning down, watching people chase down a kid with weapons? So no matter which side she's on, she has to admit that these things are fundamentally broken. And even if you did want to abolish all these things, private funding, at the very least, you probably have a more effective, even if it is biased, because we live in a world where these things already are biased.
Correct. The worse you get is the same we have.
Yes,
exactly. The worst you get.
Except
that's
that
the worst you get. It's the same we have.
The rich people are probably paying more in that system than they are now, too.
Yeah,
correct.
Every critique every critique of liberty-minded solutions, it always has it's going to get to as bad of a point as it is already today, right? And that's it's always ridiculous. The only difference is that now the people that use those services have some form of mechanism, right, to actually provide feedback that hey, this kind of sucks, and if you don't start doing a better job, you're not going to get funding, or you're not going to get my money, or anything like that. I think about, he's kind of become a meme caricature, but Dale Brown from the Detroit threat management system, and he was hired to basically, because they had a bunch of, there were companies in Detroit that were having a bunch of their armored trucks get robbed, and the police force in Detroit was not able to actually provide security for those. Or if they did provide security, it ended up in some violent shootout, which the company doesn't want, right? Because that looks really bad. So he started deploying his own types of security for that. And totally, I think it was 100% reduction in trucks being robbed with 0% violent encounters. Everything was de-escalated because he's incentivized to make sure that everything is not violent, right? Because if he doesn't do a good job of that, they're going to pull their money from him and pay someone else to do it. And so when people talk about this stuff, it's like, you've got the worst scenario now. You've got this dystopian future, like you're talking about, Larry, right now, today. The only difference is you have no power, no feedback,
Correct.
no way of actually influencing it to get better.
Absolutely.
You think about like the accountability that we have, and it's like, let's look, what accountability do we have to control the military?
Accountability.
None. Yeah.
Accountability.
I think
I don't know. Is that English? I'm not sure. I don't know
it's certainly not in the lexicon of legislator terminology.
There we go.
Yes,
At least. Yes. They don't know what that means.
When's the last time? Let's talk about military. When's the last time we've issued a declaration of war? When you talk about the police.
1942.
Yeah, right. When you talk about the
our last
police,
declaration of war was against Bulgaria, Romania. I'm not joking, and Hungary. They were Germany's allies in World War II. And a little trivia piece: we did not declare war against Finland, who was also a German ally.
Well, there we go. And you know what? Maybe we should have. Maybe we should be declaring war on every small country. No,
Yes.
I'm kidding there. But you know, so that's obviously insane. The police, obviously, we have the most ridiculous accountability when it comes to cops. I think this has been getting better, but it's only been getting better due to the advent of technology, so that you can hold. You know, there are more ways that people are able to be exposed to the ways that the corruption exists. But you look at like police courts and things like that; they let themselves off all the time. And then of course the courts themselves. You think about it in this way, where people worry about a biased court. How can the state operate a court, the court is part of the state, and then be neutral in arbitration against itself? That to me is insane. It's just as corrupt and wild. And there's literally no mechanism you have against that, except for maybe the facade of democratic voting, which is very ineffective in most cases, because most people become the swamp that is the government once they get into the positions.
Well, in a two-party system and gerrymandering, there's no real right anyway.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly. Yep, exactly. Okay, let's move into our next post here. This one is a meme that shows a sick patient on a bed, and the title reads, "Libertarian Healthcare Plan. Part 1 of 3, accepting your death." And I just wonder how much projection these people do on a daily basis, because I just don't see how our current system could be remotely skewed as libertarian, freedom, liberty oriented at all. And we all agree our current system is terrible.
I will give you an example that you might like.
Yeah.
Literally side by side, again, in America now, side by side, there are actually two healthcare systems. One of them is the essential, and one of them is non-essential, right? So essential is things like, surgeries for like your gallbladder or cancer, things of that sort. Non-essential is things like cosmetic dentistry, body implants, LASIK eye surgery. Non-essential, right? Boom.
Yep.
The non-essential is hardly regulated compared to the essential. Hardly.
Right.
In every single instance, prices have come down, service has gone up, and accessibility has increased. In every instance, this is 100%. Yet in the government run, in every instance, prices have gone up, accessibility has gone down, service has gone down. In every case. So I'm giving you two medical sides. Well, Larry, it's not essential. No. You go, when you do these things, an actual doctor is there, you can go into general anesthesia, there's a risk of death, all these things are there. Not just that. I live in New York City. Some of the wealthiest people in the country live here. Not all of them, but many of them do live here. There are two-tiered systems within the essential also. Those who take insurance and those who don't. For those of you who may or may not know, if you have a Cadillac plan insurance, part of that Cadillac plan is you can go to doctors that don't take insurance. You provide a receipt, and they'll reimburse you a certain percentage. That's the Cadillac plan that all the wealthy people have. They don't go to doctors who take insurance. They go to doctors who just swipe your credit card and give them a check. That's where they go. The private market. That's where all the rich people go. So shouldn't we be setting up a system that allows for the rich people doctors to have more accessibility, for the price to come down, and have better service for the working poor and for the middle class? Yes. What this dystopian future, she says now, is today. This is her healthcare system. This isn't ours.
Right.
My healthcare system is the one where people are getting more accessibility, prices keep coming down, and the service is getting better. That's the libertarian plan. This is her plan. She's mad about her plan and going, "You libertarians." Okay. Good luck with that.
And the funny thing that I think about, just as another funny juxtaposition, is when Senator Rand Paul was attacked and he had his ribs, broken in, and he had to get respiratory care. He went to a specialist that was in Canada, and all these people came out like, "Oh, look, he's went to Canada." He went to the only Canadian specialist place that was grandfathered in pre-socialized medicine, and that to me is what made me laugh, because they were like, gotcha, and it's like, nope, he actually went to the one place that was less socialized than America in Canada. But when it comes to, even the specifics of this meme, accepting your death, nothing to me says accepting your death like being told that there are no rooms in the hospitals because of the COVID restrictions and things, even when you have a cancer screening, or accepting your death when because of the COVID situation, you send a bunch of nursing home patients into dangerous areas that the state did. So if we're
I know nothing like that about New York State. I don't know what you're talking about.
I know. I was going to say, I don't think you're very familiar with that. That was a story that went around. I'm not sure if you heard about it way out in New York.
One.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
again, even just the little line there is just such wild projection to me. I don't know, Brad, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, this made me think of, I think it was in June of 2021 or 2020. I can't remember which one, but basically everything had been locked down. And I had an uncle who lives out in a really small town, about 8,000, 9,000 people. They have one medical facility there. During this time, they had 2 COVID patients in their medical facility. And my uncle had face cancer on his face. And he was not able to go in and get the skin cancer removed for, I think it was like 4 or 5 months, because this hospital medical facility place had 2 COVID patients, and it was mandated by the state that basically any elective non-critical surgery you weren't allowed to go do. So in that scenario, they quite literally were telling him, please accept the cancer on your face and don't get it removed.
Literally.
I had another friend whose his wife had breast cancer, but it wasn't at the stage yet where it was life-threatening. So at the UW here in Washington, she wasn't able to go in and get her surgery to remove it. She had to wait till it was advanced enough that it threatened her life. And that's the kind of, when you have this top-down bureaucracy, you get these really weird anomalies where the market is unable to provide for it because of the regulations that are placed and burdens that are placed upon them. And so you quite literally are being told by the government to accept your death in those instances.
Yeah.
And you think about markets, they are incentivized to have preventative care, right? There's an incentive for a market to take care of something, because either the further along it gets or the worse it is. And this may sound crude and harsh, but the reality is, the worse it gets, the more expensive it is. And if someone dies, they can't pay. They don't pay, right? So to some extent, there's an incentive to be as preventative as possible. And the thing is, people might say, well, they're going to look to exploit people and keep them in longer to charge. But in the government system, the problem is there's no mechanism to make that speed up whatsoever. There's no incentive for them to fix you other than the goodness of their heart, which is the exact same incentive in a market system. And so you get all of the additional cost with none of the incentive to head things off at the pass in the current government system.
I agree.
Okay. And for our last piece here, I was really specifically wanting to find a post defending a policy that I know you've been talking a lot about, and so I think we will address it here. It's not a very popular policy because a lot of people actually know it's wrong, and yet it stays in effect because of those goofy politicians. But this is, I think, a kind of a lead into that. So this is a very popular meme joke that I've seen for a couple years now, which reads, Ayn Rand, Rand Paul, and Paul Ryan walk into a bar. The bartender serves them tainted alcohol.
Hold on, by the way, none of them libertarians.
Right.
Yes.
One of them is an objectivist, and 2 of them are Republicans. So just to be clear, keep going.
Right. The bartender serves them tainted alcohol because there are no regulations. They die. And so I guess from this joke, Larry, it sounds like we need certificate of responsibility of out for serving alcohol licenses and maybe a bartending license, all those kinds of. What do you think about licensings to keep us safe? Well, of course.
Let me touch this on 2 points. First off, no libertarians there. What they should have said is Larry Sharpe, Spike Cohen, and Gary Johnson walk into a bar. Then maybe it's a libertarian joke. But without that, that's just some people who don't like libertarians, I guess. But that's not us. So number 1. Number 2. Okay, great. There's another. Again, exactly the same thing's already happening today. It's called health food stores. Natural food stores. There's no regulations on those, just regular stuff. FDA doesn't regulate those products. Most of the products in those stores are not regulated at all. And these are products that for literally decades, people have been putting in their mouths, in their bodies, and in the bodies of their children for decades. I would ask you, Don, Brett, where are all the deaths? They don't exist. It's a fantasy, totally made up. In fact, the healthiest people you know shop in those stores.
Yeah.
And then where are the regulations? Don't exist. The people who are not so healthy spend all the time in a bar, regulated. But the people who actually are healthy, they're in the unregulated spot. So this whole concept, again, demonstrably false in our country right now with decades, and I mean decades of data. Please show me all the people who are dying in these unregulated health food stores where people are putting these products into their bodies and into the bodies of their children for decades. Where are all the deaths? They don't exist. What do they have? Just because you don't have regulation doesn't mean nobody cares. So you still have two things. Number one, you have standards. Industry standards are actually more powerful. How do I know that? Because when do regulations change? They change when politicians change them. That's when regulations change. When do standards change? As the industry changes. That's why standards are better. Not just that. The FDA has regulations. And if you look at what the FDA has done compared to health food stores with only standards, the FDA has killed millions, maimed millions of Americans with no recourse whatsoever. Far more than in all the health food stores combined in the entire world. FDA has killed and maimed more people.
Absolutely.
So regulations, it should be opposite. It should be Ayn Rand, Rand Paul, and Paul Ryan walk into a drugstore that's covered by the FDA. They all take FDA-approved drugs. They die. That would be the right joke.
No one gets sued.
What actually happens. Or worse, here's again what we can see now. We have an addiction problem. An addiction problem. Our addiction problem that we have right now, 80% of our addicts got addicted from an FDA-approved, FDA-regulated drug that came through licensed doctors. 80% of those people are addicts. What about cannabis? Not regulated. Where are all those addicts? Where are all those deaths?
Yeah.
I don't see them. I don't see them at all.
A good example of this that's a little bit more recent, like in Florida, is with the whole Disney World's permits and special districting getting revoked, right? And people point to that, one way or the other, right? But what I gleaned from that is like, wow, Disney had special privileges to build whatever the heck they wanted on their property. And look, it's one of the safest places in the world to go visit, right? Because they're incentivized to make sure. It's not like, because people talk about this with like building codes. I think even that condo that collapsed in Florida, they use it as an example that like, well, I get it with food because there's maybe an immediate feedback and companies will go out of business if people die or get sick when they eat their food. But what about for things where a contractor builds a building and then 30 years later, because they didn't do something right, it collapses and people die? Well, it's like, look at Disney World, right? Look at the amazing, incredible.
No. There were regulations there.
Yes, and there were. You're right. You're exactly right. There were regulations there. It was built in spite of that. It collapsed in spite of those regulations.
Yes. Your system existed and the people died.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you're talking about. Your system existed and the people died. The dystopian future is today. It's your system.
I think we've got the name of this episode here.
Yes.
The dystopian
But I mean,
future
look at what I was trying to say earlier. Like, look at Disney World and what an amazing place that they built that's safe. Everyone feels like they can go to. You literally have roller coasters that fling people at 60 miles per hour over the air, and through tunnels, and no one dies at Disney World. People put their children on these rides, and it was all done without permits. And look how safe it is.
Well, the reality of it is, most people don't know this, but the roller coaster amusement park industry is very lightly regulated.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that.
And it's one of the safest in the world. It's like, why do you think they can take those state fairs everywhere?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just hauling regulation. There's very little regulation on amusement parks, yet somehow we don't see, thousands of people dying of amusement park deaths, That cotton candy, they got choked on cotton candy. I don't see that.
And, the funny thing is talking about sort of the dystopia is here now, is that people often hold the standards of liberty and choice and freedom against the ideal. They say,
correct.
So in your libertarian, future, apparently no one dies ever. And that's not what we're saying, right?
Nope.
So, you abolish like occupational licensing and things like that. There will be some mistakes. But the thing is, these mistakes, not only do they exist in the status quo, but when they do, especially in let's look at an unregulated area so you didn't need a license to sell Tide Pods. And then there was a bizarre challenge where kids started eating Tide Pods and some people died. You know what the response was? stores started locking them up because they said, this is stupid. We don't want people to do this. The government did not have to get involved. And this is one of those things where, had it been regulated, nothing would have changed. If you gave an occupational license in order to buy Tide Pods, nothing would have changed. But the reaction of the market was so much quicker and faster than any kind of regulation can preempt. But these people are so bent on creating occupational licenses, worrying that if, a hair cutter doesn't get their license from the government, they're going to become Edward Scissorhands and slice, someone's throat by accident, which is just so ridiculous. And of course,
doctors have licenses and they still kill people.
Right.
Lawyers have licenses, they're licensed by the state, and people still go to jail.
Yes.
I mean, people are just humans. Licensing doesn't make it perfect. All licensing does is make it expensive. It doesn't make it perfect. It just makes it expensive.
And it hurts disproportionately the competitors, the low-income people, the people trying to challenge, which, you would hope that people on the left would want these grassroots people to be able to come up and challenge the big existing businesses. But it realizes that it's actually more convenient for the politicians to support the people who are lobbying for them to not let their competitors into their field, rather than actually allow competition and bring down prices for everyone and allow that, single mom to become an entrepreneur.
Well, here's where Democrats, Republicans are hand in hand.
Yep.
They're both corporatists.
Yes. 1,000,000%.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It reminds me
of today. This has been a good show.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, yeah, no, I was going to say, Britt,
on.
do you have any thoughts to wrap us up before we close?
We're good.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Larry. We're big fans. Once again, go to LarrySharpe.com, donate to his campaign.
Do what he says, yes.
Do it.
Yes.
Imagine all of the forceful language that Larry used about liking and subscribing, but apply it to donating to Larry. We need him in the governor's. Do they have a governor's mansion in New York?
They do. Of course. Come on. New York State? Okay. Of course.
we need Larry on the governor's
helicopters.
We need him in helicopter one. We need him in helicopter one on the governor's throne.
There we go.
In the governor's robes. I'm sure that all of those things exist.
I'll have my crown and my scepter. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, with the monocle. To make sure you have the perfect libertarian image there. No, go to LarrySharpe.com if for no other reason than to read on all of his policy library recommendations to figure out what is the best path to liberty in these various issues. It's a great resource. Follow him on all the things. Like and follow and subscribe to us if you enjoyed your time, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.